is a lie in relationships that nearly all of us believe. When conflict comes, here's what we think. If that person would just change, if they would get their act together, if they would shape up, then this relationship would work. There's a lie in there that's destructive, and I'm going to share what it is and how to change. Stay with me.
Well, thanks for joining us for this edition of Living on the Edge with Chip Ingram. Living on the Edge features the Bible teaching of Chip Ingram on this Daily Discipleship program. I'm Dave Drury, and today Chip continues his series, Relationships Under Pressure. Now, just before we get started, let me encourage you to try using Chip's message notes while you listen. They'll help you follow Chip's outline and get the most of today's teaching. They're a quick download when you go to livingontheedge.org and click Listen Now, or tap Fill in Notes on the app. So let's jump in and join Chip for his message, The Only Person I Can Change Is Me.
We're in a little series on relationships, and I would like to suggest that I'm going to talk about a disease that I call chronic relatitis. I've made up this word myself. It's chronic relatitis. This is the last principle about the life lessons that I've learned about relationships. And there's a lot of great things I've learned, and been a Christian a little over 30 years. And I didn't learn much the first couple years because I wasn't in the Bible regularly. And I didn't do any of the things that all good Christians told me to do. And then I kept hitting the wall and decided, I think I'm going to get in the scriptures, and I think I'm going to join a small group. And I began to grow. And so for the last 32 out of the last 34 years, of all the things I've learned about relating to people, probably overcoming what I call chronic relatitis. And it's one of the most difficult things to deal with in any relationship when someone, perpetually acts or treats you in a way that either causes inward concern or outward conflict. Okay, that's what I mean by chronic relatitis. Someone, usually they're in your network, who act in a way or treat you in a way that either causes you constant concern for fear and concern about them or the impact, or it causes constant conflict. Let me give you a few illustrations. You're married to a husband who's not spiritually sensitive, has no desire for God, no desire for the Bible, and no desire for church, and he sits on the recliner Sunday morning with the Coors Light watching NFL football as you get the kids and walk out the door to church, and you're concerned about his soul, and you're concerned about his own life, and you're concerned about the impact on your kids. And you have nagged, and you have tried, and you have left the Bible open, and you've left the radio on the right station in the car, and for the last 10 years, no change. That's what I call chronic relatitis. Or you're the husband and you're married to a wife who's constantly critical, makes jokes, has these little put downs in public. When you go out with people at a dinner or different times like this, it's always in the form of joking and jabs, but she jabs about your looks, she jabs about your work, she jabs about your family, she jabs about your background, and everyone thinks it's funny, but you don't. And you've talked to her about it, and you've told her about how it makes you feel, and for some reason, she doesn't get it. Or it's the in-laws who are negative and critical with every visit, every letter, every phone call. When they visit, what you know is anything that's not right in the house, anything that's not right with your parenting, anything that's not right with anything, you're going to hear about it. And they do it in this syrupy, like we really care attitude that they really want to help you, and you know underneath of it is the same old junk you've had for the last 17 years. And you get a letter from them or a phone call from them. And even when they remotely do things that are positive, there's always this little inward barb on the inside that pokes about how, you know what, if you were a better father, if you were a better mother, if you'd watch your house better, you know what, you need to keep that clean because you don't keep that clean. You know what, this could happen. When's the last time you got your chimney cleaned out because you know the creosote down inside? You know, kids, I read something in the paper the other day that talked about kids that eat those kind of vitamins. You know, there's artificial coloring in it, and you just want to go, and it's just chronic. Or the child who's constantly disrespectful even after multiple disciplines. I mean, you have grounded them. earlier when they were younger, you spanked them. They just came out of the womb disrespectful. They seem to be disrespectful. They are disrespectful. You think they will always be disrespectful. And you have multiple conversations with them, multiple conversations with your mate, and you just feel like it's just chronic. What do you do? Or the boss, employee, or fellow worker that constantly has a negative attitude, is sarcastic and cynical, and nothing is ever right perspective. It doesn't matter if you just broke through the next goals, if you got a promotion, if everyone's worked as a team. This person has an attitude and a lens that no matter what happens is life is bad, life it stinks. They can take the most positive situation and they are spin masters. They can see the downside of everything. And all you know is that every time you're with them, you have these little knots in your stomach, or every time you're around them, you just think thoughts like, can't they ever say or be positive? There's always just, the sarcasm, the cynicism. Even when something good happens, they can figure a way to say, well, so-and-so's motives probably weren't right, and it probably is not really true. And yeah, it's better now, but it'll probably be just like it always was 3 weeks from now. And you live with these people. And so before we go on, I'd like you, because your faces are telling me you're beginning to really track with me, I would like you to think of who is that person or persons in your life, in your relational network, that you would say you are experiencing chronic relatitis. In other words, if there's one person that would come to your mind right now, and you could say, oh God, give me a magic pill. And when they look the other way, I could give them this magic pill, and it would change whatever it is. Who would they be? They would start being positive. They would start being sensitive. They would be open to God. They would begin to communicate. Whatever it is, who in your relational network, family, in-laws, fellow workers, neighbor, is just someone that if they would change. I mean, you've talked to them, you've prayed about it, you've kind of had the heart-to-heart, or you've never had the heart-to-heart because one of the issues is they have anger management issues and they blow up. And so you've decided, you know what, I've tried that twice and I'm not going to go there again. But if that would change, who is that person that you would really like to see really change? And if they changed, I don't think this is bad, but down deep in your heart you would say, that would be so nice for me. My world, my life, my family, my work environment, it would be so much better if so-and-so would change either this behavior or this action or how they treat me or someone I love. If that would change, then my relational world would be a lot better. Have you got that person in your mind? It usually doesn't take very long. And now I want to give you principle number 8. And like always, I'll give you a principle, a passage, and a practice. And the principle I have is the only person I can change is me. The only person I can change is me. I can try nagging, I can try manipulation, I can try threats, I can try yelling, I can try the silent treatment, I can try passive-aggressively paybacking in very subtle Christian-type ways to execute vengeance. But when all of that doesn't work, what I've learned is when I'm in a relational situation that the reality of that relationship either causes me deep concern or ongoing conflict, the biggest lesson I've learned is the only person I can change is me. And if you'd open your Bibles to Luke chapter 6, I want to develop something out of a little bit of obscure text, because you're going to say to yourself, how does this passage have to do with that principle? Luke chapter 6, it says, in fact, I put in the passage on your notes, it says, give and it will be given unto you. They will pour it out in your lap, a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will measure to you. Give, and it will be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. The idea is, as I give to other people, in the same measure, and the idea of a measure is like if I gave a cup full, I'd get a cup full back. If I gave a gallon full, I'd get a gallon full back. If I gave a 55-gallon away, I'd get a 55-gallon. Whatever measure I give out to others, he says, it'll come back to you. And he's using a farmer's or agricultural metaphor here, because if you want to get more grain or more something, the idea, shake down, running over, it's the idea that, if you shake something, you can keep making more room to put more in. So it's the idea of abundance. Give to other people, and you'll, get back. Good measure, not just, but shaken down, running over in abundance back into your lap. The relational application I want to make is that whatever you most need in a relationship, the thing you most want from the relationship, but are not receiving, give it away. This is the ultimate counterintuitive, opposite way. We have a tit-for-tat mentality. I'll be kind to you if you'll be kind to me, and I'm waiting for you to be kind to me so I can be kind to you. I will respect you when you respect me. I will do for you once you do for me. And what I'm saying is when you hit chronic relatitis, and you've tried all the different ways to change this person, and he's still on the recliner, and she is still dissing you in public, and that kid is still disrespectful, and that fellow employee or boss, whatever, is still making you nuts, and nothing is changing. Give them whatever you really want to receive from them. I'll give you a list in some practical ways what I'm talking about. If you're in a relationship where you want more time from the person, give them time. Give them time. If you want more attention from someone, maybe it's in a marriage relationship, give them attention. If you need more affection in a relationship, ask yourself what in this friendship, in this marriage, or in my relationship with my father or mother or one of my kids, what does affection look like to them? And if what it is my dad or mom's never said I love you. My kids, whatever, they're going through this stage and they're not very affectionate. My mate is not near as affectionate as I would like them to be. Give it away. Give, and it'll be given to you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken over. If you want someone to listen to you, you don't feel like you're really being heard, give that away. Start listening to them in new ways. Start asking the second and third and fourth penetrating question instead of saying, you never listen to me. See, you interrupted me again. See, you. Not that any of you have ever done that. If you want to be understood, take a week and say, I'm going to be a student of this person, and I want to understand them instead of expecting or wanting them to understand me. If you want someone to be more sensitive to them. If you want comforted by a person, comfort them. If you want them to be kinder, if you want them to be more thoughtful and give you gifts to indicate that, because that's part of your love language and you feel like, that happened in the early days when you were married, or, your parents used to be sensitive in some of those areas, then give them gifts. In other words, whatever you need most in a relationship, give it away. Give, and it'll be given unto you. Good measure, pressed down, shaken, running over back into your lap. Now your faces are looking at me. This is really wonderful. Your faces are looking like me, like you don't get it. You obviously don't know the person that came to my mind, or you wouldn't say something like this, because that's not fair. In fact, the real issue is when I look at who's giving in this relationship, this is a 90-10er. I'm already giving 90% and I get 10 back, and I get 10 back like on not a good day, a good week. I get 10 back on a good year. And so that's not fair. And what I want to say is you're right. It's not fair. It's supernatural. The other thing I want to do is ask you now in your Bibles to turn back and let me give you a little context. Where did this verse come from? Jesus, in the opening of Luke, has done two things that seem outrageous. He's violated the Sabbath 2 different times, eating one time, and then after that, he heals a man. And then after that, he goes up onto a mountain, and he calls the disciples to himself. And then he descends down, and he's going to give the Sermon on the Mount. And he comes to a level place, and there's a great multitude, and there's his disciples and all these people. And he begins to teach, and he begins to heal, and he begins to do all the things to meet the needs of other people. And then he gives that classic beginning of that message that we know, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are those who hunger and thirst. And he gives those classic beatitudes. But when he gets done with those, then picking it up at verse 27, He says, but I say to you who hear. Notice, I say to you who hear. I'm talking to those of you. I just gave a sermon. I gave it with my disciples here and all this multitude, but I say to you who hear. Translation, if you get it. If you really understand what I was trying to say. But I say to those of you who hear, love your enemies and do good to those who hate you. Bless those who persecute you and pray for those who mistreat you. Whoever hits you on the cheek, literally the right cheek, offer him the left. And whoever takes away your coat, don't withhold your shirt from him as well. Give to everyone who asks of you, and whoever takes away what is yours, do not demand it back. And just as you want men to treat you, treat them in the same way. And I mean, imagine, those are great Jesus words, right? They put them on plaques in Christian bookstores, and I mean, they sell like hotcakes. Can you imagine being in that crowd for the first time and having a good developed sense of justice like we all have, and hearing about how blessed you can be if you realize your need, if you hunger for God, if you long to be the man or woman and you want to follow him? And then he says, now, by the way, if you understood what I just said about the supernatural life with me, then bless those who persecute you. Pray for those who mistreat you. The picture isn't just of pacifism. Matthew 5, he talks about if someone hits you on the left cheek, and most of us are right-handed. And so basically, this is, Vicky, be careful here. This is Vicky's right cheek, it says. And so, with my right hand, I have a hard time hitting her. So really, this is more of, I'm using the back of my hand, I'm disrespecting the person. I'm really dissing them, and I'm saying, what you think and who you are. And he's saying, you know what? Don't allow yourself to get pulled into. Instead, so what do? You just turn and give them the other cheek. That passage doesn't teach that there's never a time to defend yourself and in light of all the rest of the Bible, but what it's capturing is giving the very opposite of what the person deserves. Isn't that the thing that we can say, from all of these? You give the very opposite of what the person deserves. And this is Jesus' relational model. But then notice he goes on, because, that part of us that's deep inside that says this isn't fair, he goes on to say, picking it up in verse 32, and if you love those who love you, what credit is that? For even sinners love those who love them. Verse 33, and if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that? For even sinners do the same thing. And if you lend to those from whom you expect to receive credit, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners in order to receive back the same amount. In other words, when you're just dishing out what other people dish to you, or when you're playing the tit-for-tat game, you're just part of the human race. But that's not like a follower of Jesus. That's not a supernatural response. That's not how relationships work. And then he goes on to say, but love your enemies and do good and lend and expect nothing in return. And notice here's where now the faith kicks in. Your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to whom? To the ungrateful and evil men. We're never more like God, and we're never more like his son Jesus than we give people what they don't deserve. He says that phrase, you'll be sons of the Most High. In other words, people will recognize. I mean, I'm with my kids and they act a certain way. Oh, you must be Ingram's boy. Or, they got all that blonde hair and they say, oh, this is one of Teresa's kids. Why? There's family resemblance. You have family resemblance to God when you treat people in a way they don't deserve.
You're listening to Living on the Edge with Chip Ingram, and Chip will be back in just a minute with his application. Chip's message today is from his series, Relationships Under Pressure, Keeping It Together When the World's Falling Apart. Now, in this series, you'll learn common lies we all tend to believe about ourselves and others, lies that wreck relationships. You'll discover the causes of conflict and get practical help for restoring damaged relationships. If you or someone you know could use a little relationship wisdom, well, this series is for you. To see more detail or to order this set of messages called Relationships Under Pressure, just tap Special Offers on the app or visit us online at livingontheedge.org.
I'll be right back in just a minute with some final thoughts about today's message.
But in light of the things that we talked about today, I just want to acknowledge that some of the most painful conflicts and difficult relationship experiences we have is with our adult children. No matter how much you love God, no matter how good your family is, when our children become adults, things change. Yes, they're to honor us, but they don't obey us anymore. And we go from, when they're small to telling them what to do, to negotiating when they're teens, and then we launch them, and then a lot of things change. Of all the things we've heard at Living on the Edge, in terms of where are the needs, we've heard over and over, will you help us with our adult children? Such conflicts, such changes in values, such problems that people don't have answers to. That's why I teamed up with parenting expert Jim Burns to create a resource called How to Navigate Life with Your Adult Children. Jim and I discuss principles that will empower and equip you as a parent when you struggle with those delicate relationships when your kids are now adults. We're going to talk about control issues. We'll talk about when to speak and when to keep your mouth shut. This is a resource I think that's really going to help you.
Thanks, Chip. Well, one of the most fulfilling gifts we can enjoy as parents is a great relationship with our adult children, where we respect and enjoy each other so much that we actually look forward to spending time together. So the whole aim of this brand new online video course called How to Navigate Life with Your Adult Children is to give you the practical tools you need to successfully build those kinds of relationships with your kids. It's absolutely free. It's 6 sessions with Chip and Jim Burns, and you can do them at your own pace, whenever you want. So I hope you'll tap special offers on the app or go to livingontheedge.org and take advantage of this great new resource. You're going to be glad you did.
As we wrap up today's program, we all have a variety of relationships. And every relationship, good relationships, they have mountaintops and they have valleys. They have challenges. I could sit down with you now, being married for over 40 years, I could tell you about seasons when your children are really young, and the teen years and the empty nest years. And there's peaks and valleys and very predictable challenges that bring huge conflict. And a number of couples don't make it through that. They get locked in, and there's hurt and there's pain, and your needs aren't met. And what happens is there's this absolute commitment that this person must change for this relationship to work. But this person is not you. It's them. And the problem with that is you have zero power to change your mate. You have zero power to change your boss. You have zero power to change one of your kids. You have zero power to change your roommate. And this principle has been so helpful to say, the only person I can change, here's where it has to begin, with me. Even if in my heart of hearts it's 10% my problem, 90% their problem. The temptation is to focus on the 90%. We were as stuck as you could be in our marriage in the early years, and we spent a couple years blaming dysfunctional ways to sort of try and make our marriage work, and it just got to where it was impossible, and I think we both got so frustrated, but the breakthrough came when we went to counseling, and when we both accepted the only person we could change is us. I couldn't change her. And she was making me nuts, and she couldn't change me. And believe me, I was making her nuts. And so here's your application. Just today, pause right now. Think of the most challenging relationship and just ask this one question and make this one commitment. The question, "Oh Lord, what do you see needs to change in me?" Then, what do you want me to do today? One step to give this other person what they don't deserve. How could I show kindness or grace even though I don't think they deserve it? You answer that question and act on it, and you will see the beginning of change.
Well, just before we close, our mission at Living on the Edge is to help Christians live like Christians. And one of the ways we do that is by giving away free resources. So when you hear a message that's especially helpful, we hope you'll pass it on to others. These free messages are easily shared from the Chip Ingram app or by forwarding the free MP3s from our website, livingontheedge.org. And don't forget to include a note about how it made a difference in your life. Well, be sure to be with us again next time when we continue our current series. For Chip and the entire team here, this is Dave Drury saying thanks for listening to this edition of Living on the Edge.